Guess you could say it's never too late to teach an old guard new tricks. I'll be here all week. I really will be here all week. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review and apparently another real joke. But hey, we're diving right into Netflix's original action movie, The Old Guard, starring some heavy hitters like Charlize Theron, KiKi, Layne, and some surprise cameos along the way. Now hey, if it's your first time here at the channel, before we get started, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the big red button below and join the family. I talk about movies, TV, I review them, I react to them, and yeah, we break down some news sometimes, so you're going to want to go ahead and turn on that bell as well, just to stay up to date with anything new. Also guys, please don't forget to go ahead and hit that like button because it does a ton to help out the channel, and also go ahead and comment down below and let me know if you're planning on watching this movie this weekend, and if you already have, what did you think of this film? Because some elements took me by surprise in a good way and also in a very boring way, but we'll definitely get right into that. The Old Guard is directed by Gina Prince-Bythewood, who did Love and Basketball. So this is definitely not a film like Love and Basketball. This is an action movie that, well, there's some surprise kills here. Let's just say Charlize Theron swinging around an axe never looked so good. The movie follows around a group of mercenaries who are immortal because all they can do is regenerate after they get hurt, and they've lived for centuries. And what they're trying to do is really just bring some balance into the world and save people, do right by others. And that's when they come across this Marine named Niall, who's also one of them. She's played by KiKi, Layne, and things get weird real fast because there's this dude who wants to go ahead and take their DNA and basically use them as weapons and make a ton of money. So that's about as much as I can give away without spoiling the plot. So let's get right into what made this movie so darn good in moments. And that really starts with the story. It's very unique. I've never seen a story like this. And honestly, for a superhero-esque film, this is pretty neat. I mean, it's basically a ton of mercenaries who don't necessarily want to do harm, but they want to do good, and they've lived through crazy wars. Like, one of the members of this mercenary group fought with Napoleon Bonaparte, and that's really very shocking actually. But they all regenerate like I just said, so you can scratch them and that scratch will heal right away. The thing is, the movie gets comic booky very fast, so you have to temper your expectations here. It starts off very realistic, and then all of a sudden you get to this one scene where they're within a group of soldiers, they get shot up, and then they all start healing and coming back to life. And then I thought, oh boy, we're in for a ride like I've never seen before. And honestly, all the action sequences from that point on were really awesome. They're pretty fun to witness, honestly. Everything was smooth. The hand-to-hand combat felt very real. All the sound effects were pretty on point, so the sound design was actually really impressive in this film. And I loved seeing Charlize Theron swing around an axe. I mean, my goodness, it's never looked better. Actually, have we ever seen her swing around an axe? I mean, we saw her in Atomic Blonde. She was really great in that film too, but she never swung around an axe. Not quite like this. And I love that KiKi, Layne kind of comes into her own as her character, and Niall starts to realize that she is also special. I mean, she's got these regenerative abilities. I gotta work on that word. But she is not like everyone else in this world, except for this immortal group of mercenaries. So she kind of learns about her abilities, and I love that her and Charlize Theron's character have this special bond because Charlize Theron sees a lot of herself in this young character, and I really like their dynamic. Honestly, it's one of the best things about this film. But outside of Charlize Theron and KiKi, Layne, there are some really cool cameos here, and some names that might surprise you in the supporting actor category, like Chiwetel Ejiofor. He plays Copley, who's this dude that well, he's a part of the CIA. I kind of can't say more than that because I want to see your reaction to it when you find out what he's really doing in this film. And then there's friggin' Dudley from Harry Potter. If you've seen any of the Harry Potter films, Harry Melling is a villain in this movie. Yeah, I didn't see that coming, guys. He plays a big pharma CEO who wants to pretty much harvest the bodies of these immortal mercenaries to try and make a ton of money and basically develop weapons and immortality himself. It's very, very different for his character, or I should say just him as a person, because you look at Dudley, you don't think of a villain, right? But here, he is actually a little sinister. And then among our immortal group of mercenaries, I really liked some of the relationships that they were building. Charlize Theron has this really tight bond with Booker, who's played by Matthias, Schoenaerts, and you've seen him in a ton of different films. He has that face that you just recognize immediately, and yeah, he was just so good in this movie, very smooth. It almost felt like he was in his element, so that was really cool to see. And then there's Marlon Kenzari as Joe, who plays the boyfriend of Nikki, played by Luca Marinelli. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't expect their romance to really kind of bring levity to the movie sometimes. I almost thought that, okay, maybe this could be forced, but it ended up working out relatively okay for the most part. There's a negative there, but we'll talk about that soon. So that's actually a good segue into something else that I really appreciated about the Old Guard, which is it's progressive in nature. I really like that. Not only did we get a gay couple in an action-oriented film, because we don't necessarily see that too often, but the fact that it worked to some degree was really refreshing to see, and also I love this female-first approach. Gina Prince-Bythewood did a really good job at just not conforming to the traditional action trope, which is there's men everywhere. It's just men that can kick butt, but she really gave the spotlight to KiKi Layne, Charlize Theron, and like I mentioned, Niall, the character of KiKi Layne. She was a Marine, and within a Marine company, the movie focused on this female-led Marine Corps group, and I really like that a lot. I mean, there's definitely room for women in action movies, and this just proved it, because the Old Guard was still really engaging in those hand-to-hand combat sequences, and honestly, I want to see more of that. So when are we getting Atomic Blonde 2? But anyway, that's just really something different about the Old Guard. So really, this movie is full of a lot of unique elements that you're not used to seeing in your traditional action movie. However, not everything works. While the premise is really different and actually pretty darn good, I feel like it's everything surrounding that makes the Old Guard fall short of the mark. I mean, there's a lot of issues with just execution, writing. I mean, geez, can we get into the writing for even one moment? The screenplay is written by Greg Rucka, who actually wrote the graphic novel according to IMDb. So I figure, okay, he knows the source material better than anyone. However, there were a lot of moments where I got bored because it's just expositional dialogue. We're not seeing what's happening. Why are we not seeing these flashback moments every time they describe them? And when we do see these flashback moments, it feels kind of, I don't know, out of place, almost as if the production budget was kind of sliced for that portion of the movie. There are some cool moments where we see Charlize Theron's character back in time, like back in the, I think the Greek like Spartan Wars and whatnot, but it just didn't feel real and convincing. Another thing that didn't really feel convincing are these conversations that our characters have. The dialogue is very generic sometimes, and well, most of the time I could kind of see it going nowhere. We almost go in circles, and a lot of scenes are really just drawn out. I mean, conversations like the one Niall and Andy had on the plane. It was good for the first, 4 minutes, and then after that it just kept lingering, and then they end up fighting, and it's kind of cool, but after a while you start to feel like maybe things are being drawn out for too long, and yeah, I just got a little distracted by how generic and one-dimensional some of these interactions were. And don't get me wrong, Charlize Theron, KiKi Layne, a lot of these actors have amazing talent, but it's just the script that kind of puts them in a corner sometimes and gives them cheesy one-liners. And in movies, if you know me guys, I'm a sucker for character development. I want to be able to feel the emotion that these characters are feeling, but unfortunately in this movie they just kind of tell you how they're feeling, and we don't necessarily get to know the characters. The character development from the beginning was a little weak, and they threw you into the mix really quickly without really building this camaraderie among our group. I mean, they tried, but it was a very quick sequence that didn't necessarily, well, work. And while the writing is generic, I also feel like the story beats are also predictable. I know I was just praising Harry Melling's performance, not as Dudley, as this big pharma CEO villain, but you can kind of see where his character is going to end up. I mean, he flies too close to the sun. It's all just so darn predictable. We've seen that before. And then there's one point where the movie says, you know what, forget it, we're not going to take our time with these characters, we're just going to throw it in your face, and it's going to be on the nose and feel incredibly forced. There's a moment on this airplane with Joe and Nikki where Joe is sticking up for his boyfriend and goes into a spoken word dialogue. Okay, I didn't really feel the connection there, and I'm a sucker for romance, but you gotta build up these characters before you lay it on thick like that, and I just don't think the writing here was strong at all and really bogged down the Old Guard. And then technically speaking, while I felt like the action was shot pretty well, I don't necessarily think this movie was anything too special in the CGI department. I mean, the regeneration was just really rough. It looked a little cheap, and honestly it was pretty distracting. It didn't really feel all too real to me, and I get it, it's a comic book movie, but I don't know, it just didn't really work for me. It wasn't very smooth. And then there's the music. Guys, I love a good soundtrack. I love a great score. And in a movie like this, you want the crescendo of the violins, all the instruments to hit its peak when they're kicking a lot of butt or when our heroes are in peril. The problem is, those action sequences with a score are really good. and then you get over to where they actually use songs, like, you know, with lyrics and a beat that you're very familiar with, because most of these songs you might have heard before, and I like listening to it in my car, and I love listening to them at home. But in a movie, it feels a little off-putting, and it's almost jarring to the point where it pulled me out of the movie, and I felt like, oh boy, this is not working at all, and I'm focusing too much on the soundtrack rather than the action on screen. And I don't think that was the director's intention, but unfortunately, you gotta know when to place certain songs, and a lot of these songs just felt thrown in there and with no real regard for what was going on screen. And guys, I'm not gonna lie to you, the movie felt really long, and maybe it was a little too long, but you know, there were still some cool little elements at the end that kept you engaged, and all over again spun you around and reminded you that okay, there could have been some fat trimmed off of this film. So it's back and forth after a very strong start. Alright guys, overall, if you had to ask me exactly what I thought about The Old Guard, I think it's a really cool attempt at a premise that I'm not always seeing in film. I mean, this is definitely new, it's unique, and I like that they start to build a little bit of a bond together, but collectively, The Old Guard is definitely falling short of the mark one too many times. It's got a unique concept, it's just everything surrounding it that might have felt like it was doing too much. Whenever the film does something really good, I feel like it's followed up with something that's not so great. I mean, unfortunately, that is just a crutch of the writing. The screenplay is just kind of all over the place sometimes and generic. And unfortunately, you can't shake that feeling as the film goes on, and then when the end credits roll, you've seen this before, and that's not what I wanted to walk away and say. Do I recommend The Old Guard? I think yes. I would say go ahead and give it a shot, because it is something that might be all the way up somebody's alley. Unfortunately, if you're looking for something that's unique and then sticks the landing, you might not like this movie as much. I think it's average. It's a decent attempt, and also I love that director Gina Prince-Bythewood did a good job at kind of like breaking out of her element, because when you look at her filmography, this is unlike a movie that she's ever done before. I love that she gave representation to not only females but the LGBTQ community. It was really cool to see that on screen, and kudos to Netflix for just like pouring money into this project, because some of those action sequences were really aided by some awesome, not special effects, but just hand-to-hand combat sequences, all that stunt work, explosions. It was pretty darn neat to see. I just think once we get to the end of the film, there's a lot left to be desired, and if they make a sequel, yeah, I'd probably watch it. I would just hope they grow from all of the shortcomings of The Old Guard. Alrighty guys, well there you have it. That's my breakdown of The Old Guard and what I loved and what I didn't like too much. Now if you want to see more reviews just like this, let me know in the comments below. Go ahead and like this video, and if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel and tap on that bell as well. We got some more reviews coming, just like Palm Springs, a Hulu original. I'm super excited to talk about that, and maybe, just maybe, I'll start breaking down what I loved about Umbrella Academy Season 1. I gotta prep for Season 2, guys, that's coming. Alrighty guys, again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.